My name is Kathleen Bennett. I'm 29, a programmer from San Diego. That evening, I arrived at my parents' house for what I thought was just another routine dinner: turkey, potatoes, and the usual talk about Lily's bright future. But instead of our simple family meal, the table looked like a wedding banquet. Candles, crystal glasses, champagne, my mom in pearls, my dad in a suit, and Lily in a burgundy dress, smiling like she already knew something I didn't. But everything turned out to be much worse. Before I go on, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because what happened next still shocks me. When we finally took our seats, the room seemed to tighten around me. The candles hissed softly, and the champagne in the flutes sent up a delicate fizz that felt louder than conversation. My mother reached to smooth the table runner even though it was already perfectly straight. My father cleared his throat, pushed back his chair, and stood with the small, solemn ceremony he usually reserved for holidays. He lifted his glass. To Lily and her future. Forks paused midair. My mother's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Even the corners of her eyes smiled. I forced a polite grin, waiting for the explanation that would make this not as strange as it felt. Lily pressed her napkin to the lipstick on her glass and tilted her head at me. Everyone clinked, and I clinked too, the fragile ring of crystal sounding like the start of some play where I didn't know my lines. To Lily, my mother repeated, breathless, and took a triumphant sip. I tried to catch Dad's eye, some context, any clue, but he was already sitting, content, his shoulders loose, the tension of a man who thinks a job is well done. I looked at the turkey like it might whisper the answer. "We should tell her," my mother murmured to Lily, smiling in that way that pretends to be modest, but begs for attention. Lily obliged. She put her phone face down, then flipped it with a flourish, like a magician. "Okay," she said, wetting her lower lip with a quick dart of tongue. "I bought a house in La Jolla." For a beat, I thought I had misheard. Then the screen's brightness hit me, a wide, glimmering shot of an ocean horizon, a strip of terrace, glass balustrades so clean it looked invisible. Swipe. Panoramic windows, black steel frames, sunlight poured in like it paid rent. The next swipe. A kitchen that could win an argument just by existing: waterfall island, veined quartz, matte black fixtures, a stove with more dials than my entire car. "Oh, Lily." Mom clapped, the sound sharp and quick. "Darling, it's perfect. Isn't it?" Lily's voice rose into that tinkling enthusiasm. "Look at the backsplash. Handmade tile. And the floors? White oak. It's basically a dream." Dad beamed. He doesn't beam often. He's more of a contained smile man, but now his pride was unbuttoned, loosened, expansive. He squeezed my mother's hand. "Our girl." I swallowed. La Jolla is not a casual decision. It's cliffs and coves and realtors who speak in numbers with too many zeros. It's not a starter home. It's a declaration. I stared at the photos, trying to click into the logic that made this possible. Lily has a marketing job that reliably produces good outfits and nice lunches, but not glass boxes facing the Pacific. "Wait," I said, intending steady and landing on thin. How could you afford it?" It came out in two parts, because the first half of the sentence had to climb over the lump in my throat to reach the second. The whole room quieted. But Lily's smile didn't falter. She angled the phone so Mom could zoom in on the terrace's concrete planters. "Just wait till you see the tile by the outdoor shower," she said, airy, as if my question were an interruption to a slideshow. "Sweetheart," Mom said, turning toward me. It worked out beautifully. Everything lined up. "Perfectly," Dad echoed, with a warm voice. My pulse inched into my ears. "How?" I repeated, quieter, because loudness felt like it would tear the room. "How did it line up?" Mom reached for her champagne, took a tiny, stage-managed sip, placed it back precisely on the coaster, and patted Lily's wrist. Dad sat straighter, that familiar paternal narrative voice clicking into gear. "Well," he began, a word that for him always meant a decision had already been made. "Families help each other reach milestones." Lily nodded, almost solemn, as if she were accepting a scholarship. "It's a smart investment," she added, chin high. "Timing is everything in real estate." I felt a sudden need to stand, to open a window that wasn't there, to find some fresh air. The crystal caught light and scattered it into little shards across the tablecloth, onto the butter dish, tiny, glittering alarms. Mom leaned forward, soft eyes, the softness she saved for moments when she wanted me to agree without thinking. We helped Lily with the down payment. I stared at them, slow to open, slow to process. Then Dad added the part that split the room cleanly in two. From your wedding fund. I went still, like my body understood before my brain did. The word fund echoed in my head. The wedding fund wasn't some fluffy family myth. It was my project, my rules, my discipline, my future. 10 years ago, fresh out of college and clutching my first offer letter, my parents had sat me down at this same table with coffee and glossy optimism. Be smart now and you'll thank yourself later, Dad said. Mom folded my hands in hers and added, when the time comes, you'll have money for a wedding or a house. Real stability. That's what a good life rests on. I believed them. I wanted the calm of a plan. So I opened a high-yield savings account. Set up an auto transfer for every 1st and 15th, the same days my paycheck landed. 20% skimmed off the top. I topped it off with every little extra I could capture: tax refunds, year-end bonuses, freelance checks from fixing broken landing pages at night. Even the $50 birthday slips from relatives who never remembered what I did for a living, but liked to send greeting cards. I lived in a studio you could cross in 8 steps if you didn't mind brushing the bed, a 2nd floor walk-up over a nail salon that smelled perpetually like acetone and lavender. I took the bus to client meetings when I could, brought a thermos of coffee instead of swinging by cafes, meal prepped in batches on Sundays, and learned to make 3 dinners from 1 roasted chicken. I furnished that studio like a Craigslist archaeologist. A $60 couch with a lopsided arm, a wobbly IKEA table someone abandoned posted at the curb, mismatched chairs I sanded and painted in the parking lot. My laptops were my only splurge, tools of the trade, I told myself. Dates were cheap tacos and beach walks. Vacations were long weekends at friends' sofas. When my coworkers flew to Cabo, I smiled and said, maybe next year, and I meant it. I kept a simple spreadsheet that added columns with satisfying regularity. January plus $400, March plus $1,200, bonus, August plus $300, freelance, December plus $1,700, bonus plus refund. Whenever I felt the itch to buy something I didn't need, I opened my banking app and watched the little graph rise, like a tide returning to shore. My parents loved the word responsible. They wore it like a family crest when they talked about me to aunts and neighbors. Kathleen is so responsible, Mom would say, and I'd feel a ping of warmth, then a chill right after, because responsible also meant doesn't ask for anything. Lily didn't love that word. She preferred deserves. She liked shoes that clicked on tile and rooftops with string lights and cocktails that came with smoke. I didn't judge. I just did the thing I'd been told was smart. It wasn't glamorous to say no to concerts, to skip new phones, to walk past the boutique on India Street pretending not to notice the dress in the window. But every no was a tiny yes to the future. There were milestones, small, silly ones that felt huge to me. The first time the fund hit 5 figures. The sticky note I wrote $20,000 and stuck to my monitor for a day before tucking it inside a notebook because bragging felt bad even when it was private. The Sunday I brought cupcakes and told my parents I'd crossed $50,000, and Dad raised his eyebrows in impressed surprise while Mom asked if I'd thought about a venue someday. I laughed it off, but that night I let myself picture both paths, a backyard wedding under rented lights, or a down payment on a modest condo with a small balcony where I could sit under a blanket on chilly nights. The fund was possibility shaped into numbers. It was the first thing in my life that felt entirely mine. I watched it survive a broken car belt, a rent hike that made me renegotiate my lease with a knot in my gut. I would lower the auto transfer for a month, then nudge it back up, apologizing to the future like it was a friend I'd stood up. By 29, after 10 years of choosing later over now, I had stacked $85,000. $85,000. Not from a windfall, not from luck. From 1,000 small decisions no one saw. I told almost no one the exact number, not even my closest friend at work, because numbers draw opinions like sugar draws ants. My parents knew the general range because they asked in that casual tone that is anything but casual. I thought it was harmless to answer vaguely. Around 80, I said once, rinsing strawberries at their sink. Wow, Mom said, impressed. So proud of you, Dad added, and I felt 10 years old and 6 feet tall at the same time. Which is why, when the word fund left Dad's mouth in that soft, satisfied tone, my chest tightened into a fist. I slid my phone into my lap under the table and opened my banking app like a reflex. Face ID blinked me in. The account list popped up, checking. Savings. Wedding/house. I pressed the last one and waited, my pulse punching at my throat. The screen loaded and I thought, absurdly, that there must be a bug. The blue line that used to slope upward was an elevator shaft. Balance, 12 cents. A single dime and 2 pennies made of digital light. Beneath it, the transaction list. Yesterday, wire out, $85,000. Memo, escrow deposit, La Jolla. A sound happened in the room, laughter? A chair scraping? But it felt far away, as if I were in the hallway. It expanded to show the recipient bank, the escrow company, the date and time down to the second. I stared at the name La Jolla until the letters blurred, then snapped back into focus like they wanted to be seen hurting me. I scrolled further, confirming what I already knew. No holds. No pending transfers in. Just the clean, sterile finality of a completed wire. My mind tried to bargain with the facts. Maybe I had set something up and forgotten. Maybe there had been a mistake and the bank would reverse it by morning. But I knew my own systems. I had built them like I build sites, with backups and double checks and plain English labels to prevent exactly this kind of error. I blinked down at the tiny green checkmark next to the wire, the universal symbol for done, and felt my throat close around a strange, weightless breath. I locked my phone and set it, carefully, next to my water glass. Around me, dinner continued to pretend it was dinner, steam rising from potatoes, the melting curve of butter, the quiet chime of utensils. My mother was describing the tile Lily had chosen for the powder room. My father nodded appreciatively, as if tiles were achievements. Lily swiped through her photos, the ocean shining in miniature between her fingertips. I had spent 10 years saying yes to a future, and yesterday, it vanished into a line item with my sister's dream attached to it. I felt my chair scrape back before I even decided to move. Heat shot up my neck, the kind that makes your ears ring. That was my money. I heard myself say, louder than I've ever spoken at this table. My fork clattered against the plate. Dad's face hardened instantly, the easy host mask dropping. His jaw set, the vein at his temple giving a little pulse. It's a family fund. You knew we would use it for common goals. For a second, I thought he was joking. His tone was the same he used to explain how to program a DVR to my grandmother, patient and patronizing. Common goals. I repeated. You mean Lily's goal? Mom didn't hesitate. She stepped in. Lily has real plans, a wedding, a husband, a house. And you don't even have a boyfriend. She said it lightly, but it landed like a punch under my ribs. Lily, already poised for her entrance line, gave a short laugh through her nose, the kind she used when she wanted to look above the mess. Kat, come on, you always joked that you didn't want a big wedding. So, what's the difference? She angled her phone back to herself, pretending to check another photo, the terrace, the kitchen, a glossy slideshow of my missing years. I put my palms flat on the tablecloth, feeling the texture of the damask pattern. I saved that money, I said, slower now, fighting the tremor in my throat. I skipped vacations. I bought used furniture. I lived in a studio the size of this dining room, so I could have choices later. Those were my choices. Dad's eyes narrowed. Your choices were supported by this family. Your mother co-signed your first lease. We helped with your car insurance when you were starting out. His voice gathered speed, like a prosecutor listing exhibits. A family fund is flexible. It serves the greatest need. Whose need? I asked. Because I didn't need artisanal tile and an ocean view. Mom's smile turned thin. Don't be petty. We're talking about a home. Stability. Children someday. Real milestones. You've always been so independent. You'll manage, like always you did. I would have managed better with my $85,000, I said, before I could soften it into something polite. And watch the number land between us, heavy and undeniable. Lily clicked her tongue softly. Drama, she said, mostly to her glass. You act like we burned your diary. It's money. It moves. It comes back. It was my money, I repeated, quieter now, but the words felt bigger. Each repetition steadied me. Dad pushed his chair back an inch, the legs scraping across the hardwood like a warning. You are not listening. There is a bigger picture here. Families pool resources. You've benefited. Now Lily does. Someday, when you have real plans, the family will be there. I had plans, I said. They just didn't look like Lily's. Mom exhaled through her nose, a gentle scold wrapped in perfume. What plan, Kathleen? Another year in that tiny apartment? Another used couch? We're talking about progress. And Lily is moving forward. I laughed, a short, shocked sound I didn't recognize as mine. Progress? By taking what I saved. My sister set her phone down and finally met my eyes. Her expression was so calm it made me cold. You're making this ugly, Kat, she said evenly. You always said you didn't care about a big wedding. You said you'd elope in Vegas with a $10 ring. I also said I wanted a home someday, I shot back. A home I paid for. You can still have that, Mom soothed, like she was rearranging a blanket. In time. You are responsible, darling. You'll rebuild. Lily's timeline is now. There it was, the translation. You will recover. She needs it more. I looked at the turkey, the crystal, the champagne that had felt celebratory when I walked in and now tasted like betrayal. Why didn't you ask me? I said, and the room startled me by going completely still. If this is a family, why didn't you tell me? Why a wire yesterday, not a conversation last week? Dad's mouth flattened. Because you're emotional about money. You always have been. I blinked. I'm emotional because you took it. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled back. Her eyes flickered, offended. We did what was best for the family, she said. Sometimes leaders make hard decisions. You're not a board. I stated. This isn't a company. It's my life. Lily rolled her shoulders, as if loosening tension before a run. Look, Kat, she said, voice dipping into a soft register that fooled strangers and never fooled me. I'm sorry you feel blindsided. But this is good news. For all of us. You'll be Aunt Kat in La Jolla. You'll love it. Sunsets. Dinners on the terrace. You of all people talk about user experience. Well, this is the life experience we're optimizing. I stared at her. Did you really just turn my savings into a UX metaphor? The corner of Dad's mouth twitched. Enough, he said, final. The words sat there like a gavel. We are not going to ruin a perfectly good evening with theatrics. Then let me end the scene, I said, pushing my chair back. My legs were shaking. I kept my hands on the table until they calmed. You made a decision without me. You used my money to buy Lily's house. And you dressed it up like a toast. Mom's eyes went bright, tears on cue. Why are you being cruel? She whispered. I'm being clear, I said. For once. I stood so fast my chair bumped the sideboard. You didn't just steal my money, I said, voice too bright, like a glass about to crack. You stole my years. Dad's expression flattened into the cold mask he wore for bad news at work. Don't be dramatic, he said, every syllable shaved down. You're just being selfish. The family always supports those who need it most. A laugh escaped me short, ugly. Selfish. I looked at the candles, at the champagne sweating in the bucket, at the burgundy dress that matched the stain on the tablecloth where someone had dripped wine. I built that fund $10 at a time. Lily leaned back, her lipstick perfect, her phone face down like a trophy she didn't have to show anymore. The smirk was small, but sharp. Okay. You can stay in my guest room until you save up again. There it was, generosity dressed as condescension. The guest room in the house my money bought. The word guest did a slow spin in my head and came down like a gavel. I reached for my bag on the floor, fingers fumbling with the strap. The old leather creaked, familiar, loyal. Sit down, Dad ordered, not loud, just certain he would be obeyed. I shook my head. The chandelier hummed. The room smelled like something scorched. I can't, I said. I'm done eating celebratory turkey for a theft. Mom flinched at the word. Kathleen. Call it what it is, I said. I didn't consent. You wired it out yesterday and toasted it today. Lily clicked her tongue. You're ruining the mood. The mood was built with my savings, I said, and for once I didn't swallow the line back down. Silence opened like a trapdoor. I pushed my chair in neatly, some reflex of manners surviving the wreck. The small scrape of wood on wood sounded like punctuation. Dad stood too, bracing his hands on the table, knuckles white. You're overreacting. It's a house. It benefits everyone. You'll thank us one day. Don't rewrite this, I said, surprised at how steady I sounded. You made me the donor and the surprise guest at the ribbon cutting. Mom's voice went soft, pleading. Honey, please. Don't leave angry. I don't have any other way to leave. I said. I straightened my napkin, stupidly, and set it beside the plate like some part of me believed neatness could redeem a night like this. Then I turned toward the hallway. The runner under my feet was familiar, a faded blue with two small snags I'd had since high school memorized like constellations. I walked past the family photos hung in a grid, Lily at prom, Lily at graduation, Lily on a boat, me holding a participation ribbon like a joke. My coat hung on the antique hall tree. I missed the first loop and dropped it. The fabric kissed the floor. I picked it up and found the sleeve, breathing through the sticky feeling in my chest. Behind me, chairs moved. Kathleen, sit down, Dad said again, colder. I put one arm into the coat. No, you're acting like a child. I acted like an adult for 10 years, I said without turning. Tonight I'm acting like a person who knows what a boundary is. Mom's slippers scuffed. I could hear the soft, quick steps she took whenever she thought she could catch a disaster with her hands. We can talk tomorrow, she said. We'll all feel differently. I'll feel poorer, I said. The coat's second sleeve found my arm. The fabric settled over my shoulders like a decision that had been waiting to be made. Lily's voice floated from the dining room, bored, sugar sweet. Offer still stands, Kat. My guest room has a view. You'll love waking up to the ocean. I considered turning around, saying something that would finally make her understand. But there is a point where explanations become performance, and I was done performing. I grabbed my keys from the little ceramic dish by the door, the dish I'd made in 7th grade, glazed a messy teal. Don't do anything you'll regret, Dad stated. I've already done it, I said. I trusted you. My hand found the doorknob. The brass was warm from the heat of the house. I turned it. The latch clicked, a precise little sound that echoed in my bones. For a second I waited for someone to apologize, for the universe to rewrite the scene, for a deus ex machina to drop into the foyer and declare a misunderstanding. But only quiet answered me. I opened the door. Evening air blew in, cool, clean, smelling faintly of jasmine from Mom's front bushes. The sky over the cul-de-sac held the last thin smear of pink. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked. Somewhere, a dog barked twice, then gave up. I stepped onto the porch and felt the old wood flex under my heels the way it always had. Behind me, Mom said my name again, small and breaking. I let it pass over me. I walked down the 4 steps, past the geraniums I'd brought last Mother's Day, now overwatered and leggy, past the ceramic frog Lily had bought as a joke that somehow ended up permanent. I clicked the unlock on my key fob. The car chirped obligingly, ordinary, blessedly indifferent. At the curb, I opened the door and tossed my bag onto the passenger seat. It landed with a thud sound. I slid in, shut the door, and everything went quiet, the kind of quiet that fills your ears when you decide to stop pleading your case. I could still see the front door in the rearview mirror, and my mother's slim shape hovering just inside it, Dad's shadow farther back, upright and certain. The engine started. The radio came on low, some soft song, and I turned it off. I put the car in drive. I looked once at the porch, not at their faces, not at the door, just at the house that had taught me how to leave. Then I eased away from the curb and did it. For the first time, I left without looking back. I slammed my apartment door and leaned against it, listening to the cheap deadbolt click into place like a final word. My phone buzzed before I'd even kicked off my sneakers. Then again. Then in a steady, angry rhythm. I put the kettle on, rinsed a mug that still smelled faintly of peppermint, and watched the blue gas flame flare up. The buzzing marched with me from counter to couch. I turned the screen face down on the coffee table, as if that could quiet the noise my family was making inside my small living room. When I finally flipped it over, the notifications stacked like dominoes. 21 missed calls. 8 voicemails. A dozen texts. Mom first, always mom. You need to be an adult, not make a scene. A second, longer one. You embarrassed your father. Lily was hurt. Come back tomorrow and apologize. We can talk calmly then. Attached, a blurry photo of the champagne glasses at dinner, as if proof of celebration could erase theft. Dad's voicemails had none of Mom's sugar. You are disgracing this family, he barked, voice tight like a guitar string about to snap. We made sacrifices for you. That fund was for family. Everyone understood that except you. In the background, I heard the familiar clink of ice in his glass. The cough he never admits is from years of cigars. He called again 3 minutes later. Answer the phone, Kathleen. You're acting like a child. Lily's messages were shorter, sharper. Be happy for me finally. Then a photo of her on the terrace of the house in La Jolla, hair backlit by a fat orange sunset. Ocean breeze therapy. You'll love it when you see it. As if the view could launder the money. I set the phone down and let the kettle scream. I poured water over a tea bag and stood there holding the heat, breathing in steam like medicine. My apartment was quiet in that way only a small, careful life can be. But they kept calling. And I let them. Somewhere between the third and fourth voicemail, the fear I'd carried for years of being cut off, of being labeled ungrateful, of losing my place at that crowded Sunday table, thin like fog under noon sun. It didn't vanish. It just drifted. In its place came something so unfamiliar I didn't recognize it at first. I mistook it for shock. But later I would call it indifference. Around midnight, Mom again. Kath, please. You know your sister's timeline. The escrow closes Friday. Don't ruin this with drama. Then the line that would have frozen me in college, in my first job, in every argument where I'd folded like damp paper. If you continue to cause trouble, your father will remove you from his will. The words slid over me like rain on a windshield that had finally been treated. I sipped my tea and deleted the message without saving it, a tiny ceremony I hadn't known I needed. Sleep came in pieces. I dreamed of passwords changing without warning, of being locked out of accounts I'd created, of a little girl counting crumpled dollars into a jar while adults talked about sensible futures. I woke at 5:12 with the taste of pennies in my mouth and opened my laptop out of muscle memory. Error logs, a client brief for a seafood company rebranding, a bug ticket about a button shifting 2 pixels on mobile. The ordinary work steadied me. Code does what you tell it, or it breaks loudly. It does not smile and say, be reasonable. It does not rename your savings ours. At 7:03, Dad again. Last chance to undo this. You will not like what happens if you make me choose between my daughters. I stared at the transcript his voicemail app provided. I read it twice. The threat turned into a shape I could finally recognize. On the way to the office, I muted our family group chat, Bennett Bunch, with a cartoon turkey as the icon. Messages kept trickling in behind the gray crescent moon. Aunt Deb's confusion. What happened last night? A cousin's neutral thumbs up to Lily's house photo. Lily's, can we be normal? And Mom's, please don't involve outsiders. Outsiders. As if decency belonged to some private club printed on monogrammed napkins. At my desk, I pulled on headphones without music and let the day rush past. Slack pings from coworkers about grid spacing and color contrast. A QA tester in Phoenix flagged an issue with Safari. I pushed a fix before lunch and ate a sandwich at my keyboard, chewing slowly, absurdly aware of the detail that it was turkey, like the universe had a weak sense of humor. By afternoon, the pressure had evolved into strategy. Mom offered olive branches shaped like obligations. Come home tonight. We'll draw up a family plan. You'll see this is for everyone's good. Dad escalated. If you're going to act like a stranger, we will treat you like one. Lily tried a softer angle. I'll pay you back when we sell the house we were renting. Or you can live with me. The winking emoji made my teeth ache. I drafted replies I didn't send. Because I deleted them all. At 5:16, I typed the only thing that felt like mine. Please stop contacting me about the fund. I did not consent to its use. Do not speak about me to others. I will communicate in writing when I am ready. I read it 3 times. I sent it to Mom, to Dad, to Lily separately. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and walked to the little park behind my building. Kids were wobbling along on scooters, their parents jogging behind with backpacks and snacks. A woman on a bench cried quietly into her sleeve while her dog watched the grass as if something important might happen there. The sky over Mission Valley went pink. I breathed until my shoulders unclenched. When my phone buzzed through the D&D filter, favorites, my stomach flipped before I saw the name. It wasn't one of them. It was my landlord confirming the air filter delivery tomorrow. I nearly laughed with relief. Back home, I made pasta with Jared sauce, added garlic and a pinch too much red pepper, and ate it standing up. I answered 2 client emails and scheduled a deploy for the morning. When I finally unmuted the family thread, it had swollen with messages while I was out. Mom announcing to relatives that Kathleen is taking some space. Please respect it. Dad declaring that certain actions have consequences. Lily posting another sunset from her terrace. Good vibes only. I turned off the lamp and let the room go soft. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor practiced piano, haltingly, left hand slower than right. I thought of 10 years of envelopes slid across my parents' kitchen table. Of every good girl I'd swallowed like medicine that never worked. So I opened my laptop, scrolled through old emails until I found my cousin Ben's holiday message from 2 years ago, and clicked on the signature block I'd half noticed then and ignored. Ben Peterson, Associate, Peterson and Hale LLP. Beneath that, Mark Peterson, Managing Partner. Ben had once mentioned that his dad, my uncle by marriage, handled estate and fiduciary disputes. At the time, I'd smiled politely and filed it away with everyone else's professions. Now that one line glowed like a neon exit sign in a smoke-filled room. I typed Mark Peterson into the search bar, clicked the firm site, and stared at the page. Gray hair, steady smile, bullet points about trusts, elder abuse, financial misconduct inside families. The words felt both too big and exactly right. I dialed the main number with my tea gone cold beside me, ready to hang up if a receptionist asked for purpose in that bright, efficient tone that makes you doubt the emergency you're in. She didn't. She said, one moment, and after 2 rings, a man's voice landed in my ear, calm and unhurried, like he had time for the whole story. Mr. Peterson, I said, and heard the wobble I hadn't wanted to reveal. I'm Kathleen, Ben's cousin. My parents wired $85,000 out of my savings yesterday without my consent. They used it for my sister's down payment. And they're calling it a family decision. He didn't interrupt. He didn't reassure me with platitudes or say, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. He let the silence be space, not judgment. I started at the beginning. The fund. The transfers. The wire memo that read escrow deposit La Jolla. The lines about real plans and family goals. My own voice slowed as I heard it out loud for the first time. When I finished, he inhaled once, thoughtfully. Kathleen, he said, flat and clear, this is not a family decision. This is financial appropriation. Appropriation. Not generosity. Not flexibility. Not a misunderstanding that good daughters smooth over. You have every right to go to court, he added, just as bluntly. And we can talk about options that may avoid that, but let's begin with the reality. Funds titled to you are not communal cash, just because people who raised you say so. I sat very still. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize was airless. I could hear the soft hum of my refrigerator, the traffic rolling past on the street below, the tiny tick of my wall clock. Walk me through the title and the transfers, he said. Whose name is on the account? Who has access? How did they initiate the wire? Accounts solely mine, I said. Online banking. Shame surged like a blush I was glad he couldn't see. I kept my login on their Wi-Fi once when I was over to help Dad with his tax app, and my mom is good with guessing. She knows my middle name, my first pet, my high school. My security questions weren't very secure. That explains mechanism, he said, not unkindly. But mechanism doesn't grant permission. Do you have statements, a screenshot of the transaction, any written acknowledgement from them? I have the wire detail. And texts from them after dinner saying it was for the family's good. Keep those, he said. Forward nothing to anyone. Write down everything you remember from the conversation while it's fresh. Timestamps help. We'll need your bank's fraud/unauthorized transfer policy. Don't call them yet. I'd like to do that with you or on your behalf, because words matter, and we don't want the bank pigeonholing this as a domestic dispute and closing the file. A small, stunned laugh slipped out. You sound like you've seen this before. I see families misuse the language of love to launder theft every week, he said, almost weary, but not surprised. They dress it up as duty, tradition, fairness. It's still conversion. And if they threaten you, wills, ostracism, reputational smear, that's coercion, not negotiation. I pictured my mother's voice message about the will and felt that strange, steady indifference settle again. My dad said I'm disgracing the family, I admitted. And my mother said I need to be an adult, not make a scene. He let out a breath that held no contempt for me, only for the script. Adults make boundaries. Children are told to share because a parent said so. You're an adult. And you get to choose. We talked logistics. He asked for my full name, address, the bank's name, the approximate dates and deposits that built the fund. He listened when my voice shook describing the $10 increments and the bus rides that added up to $85,000. He said, your history matters, in a way that made my throat go tight again. Here's my recommendation, he said finally. Tonight, write your recollection. Tomorrow morning, we'll send a preservation letter to your parents and your sister instructing them to retain all communications and not to encumber or further transfer the funds or any property purchased with them. We'll contact the bank to flag the transaction as unauthorized and request a hold pending our investigation. Depending on their response, we'll consider a civil demand and, if needed, a petition for injunctive relief. We'll keep this as low heat as possible, but we won't let them recast theft as kindness. The phrases sounded like scaffolding under a building I'd only ever seen as a facade. How much will this cost? I asked, embarrassed by the practical question breathing right beside my anger. We'll start with a consult retainer, he said, naming a figure that made my stomach dip and then level. If we recover funds, fees can be sought. I'd rather you know exactly than guess and worry. Okay, I said. Okay. Last thing, he added, and his voice softened. If at any point you feel guilt creeping in because someone says family, feel free to call me. We hung up and I sat there a long time, palms open on my knees like I was catching rain. The room looked the same leaning fern, the same thrifted lamp, the same coffee ring on my desk, but it felt rearranged by a sentence I couldn't unknow. You have every right to go to court. I opened a blank document and began to type, not as a plea to anyone, but as a record. Dates, deposit amounts, the day I named the account, the night I ate ramen to hit an even 1,000. When my phone rang again, I almost ignored it. Unknown number. I thumped decline and it rang right back. And something, instinct, curiosity, fate, made me answer on the second try. Kathleen. The voice on the line was tentative and familiar in a way that made my heart jerk. It's Joanne. Aunt Joanne. My father's older sister. The aunt who used to send me silly socks on my birthdays and then, after some fight I was too young to understand, stopped coming to Thanksgiving. The one we didn't mention unless we wanted to make Dad angry. I hadn't spoken to her in years. I hope it's not too late, she said. Ben told me you might call Mark. He mentioned it at dinner. I'm sorry to intrude. It's okay, I said, though my voice came out small. Hi. I heard enough, she said gently. And I wanted to tell you something no one told me when I was your age. I stood and walked to the window, staring down at the glow of the laundromat sign across the street. The A flickered. It always did. Okay, I said. When Grandpa died, she said, your father took the shares that were supposed to go to me. He explained that it was better for the family. She paused, as if daring the memory to soften. He said consolidating the stock would protect our legacy, and that as the eldest son he knew how to maximize value. He promised he'd make it right later. My stomach went cold. She continued, voice flat with the kind of anger that has calcified into fact. I said nothing because I didn't want to be the sister who made the funeral about money. Because our mother asked me to keep the peace. Because I believed him. And I regret it to this day. Don't let them do this to you. The words were so plain, so unadorned, they hummed. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, as if closeness could make the years between us collapse. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, she said. People like your father count on silence. They bank on the shame of the person they're taking from. They name it family and hope you'll swallow it. I thought of the champagne, the toast, the room laid out like a ceremony for my consent. I thought of how easily my mother had said, you'll manage. What did you do? I asked, though I already knew. The regret was the answer. I swallowed it, she said simply. I bought the story that keeping peace was nobler than keeping what was mine. It rotted me from the inside. When I finally confronted him, he called me ungrateful and dramatic. It ruined whatever was left between us. He still says I abandoned the family, when what I abandoned was his despicable scheme. I sat on the arm of the couch and pressed my free hand to my sternum, like I might keep my heart from leaping toward the phone. I talked to Mark, I said, the sentence feeling both small and seismic. He says it's appropriation. He says I have rights. You do, she said, fierce and sudden. And you will need to remind yourself of that every day. They will try to rename what happened until you doubt your own memory. Don't let them. Write it down. Get a lawyer. Tell the truth. And when they tell you you're ruining the family, remember, they already did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear her breathing. I could hear my own. Somewhere outside, a skateboard rattled over a crack in the sidewalk. Thank you, I said finally. 2 words I had used 1,000 times in my life for the wrong things, now for the exact right one. A woman reaching her hand back through time to warn me about the hole she fell into. If you need copies of old documents, she added softly, I kept everything. The will. The original allocation. The email where he explained his plan. I never felt brave enough to use them. But maybe they can help you. They can, I said, and felt the sentence slot into the new architecture of my night. They will. We said goodbye like people who might become allies out of necessity and then, if we were lucky, out of affection. Mark moved quickly, not with drama but with paperwork. By noon the next day, we had a signed engagement letter, my written recollection, screenshots of the wire details, and a preservation notice drafted in his clean, surgical prose. He explained it like a checklist. First, demand they retain all communications. Second, notify the bank's fraud department. Third, file a verified complaint for conversion and seek temporary injunctive relief. Fourth, prepare a stipulation if they showed signs of reason. It wasn't war paint, it was protocol. He put me on speaker while he called the bank. Good morning, this is Mark Peterson, counsel for Ms. Kathleen Bennett, he began, calm enough to lower my blood pressure through the phone. He read the account number, the date and exact timestamp of the unauthorized wire, the escrow company's name, the memo field that had branded the theft with my sister's dream. He used words I'd only seen on legal blogs: unauthorized, conversion, constructive trust, freeze. By the end of the call, the investigator had a case number and a temporary hold pending review was placed on both the recipient escrow account and on my parents' joint accounts that had initiated related transfers. Within hours, my father exploded by text, "What have you done?" Then the voicemail, "You froze your own parents' money? You are betraying us for money." Mom followed with her familiar lace over a blade. "This is a misunderstanding. Call off your lawyer before you embarrass us. You're destroying the family." Lily's pinged last, a photo of a bouquet proposal mood board. "Because of you, I'll lose my house and my wedding. Are you happy?" Mark's reply went out formally by email to all 3, counsel copied, subject line in crisp serif type, notice of preservation/unauthorized transfer. He attached the complaint he planned to file at 8 a.m. the next morning if they refused to discuss restitution. Reading my name at the top, plaintiff, felt like stepping into a new posture. Not the bad daughter, not the scolded child. The person to whom something belonged. They came to the meeting because the bank told them to. When an account freezes, power shifts. We sat in Peterson and Hale's conference room, glass walls, views of downtown. I took the seat nearest the end. Mark sat to my right, legal pad squared, pen uncapped. On the other side, my father arrived first, jaw tight, suit darker than usual. My mother came in with swollen eyes and a tissue she crumpled into perfect quarters. Lily followed in a white blazer over jeans, like she'd dressed for a network apology tour. Dad didn't greet me. He pointed at Mark. "This isn't how family handles conflict," he said, skipping hello like it was optional. "You're exploiting our daughter." Mark looked like a man discussing a parking permit. "I represent your daughter," he said. "No one is exploiting her here. We're here because $85,000 were transferred from an account titled solely in Kathleen's name to purchase real property for your other daughter without Kathleen's authorization. Our task is to return what is hers." "You're betraying us for money," Dad snapped at me, as if Mark had evaporated. The sentence smelled like cigar smoke and the kitchen lectures of my childhood. "Family supports those who need it most. You know that." Mom's voice cracked on cue. "You are destroying the family, Kathleen. We raised you to be generous. We believed you would understand." Lily leaned forward, perfectly composed. "Because of you, I'll lose my house and my wedding," she said, like a line she had rehearsed. "Everything's already in motion. Vendors, deposits, the venue. You're just punishing me for being happy." I looked at her and thought of the wire's memo line, factual and greedy, escrow deposit, La Jolla. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm refusing to pay for you." Dad's hand flattened on the table. "We are not going to be humiliated by our own daughter. Call off the bank. Withdraw whatever you filed." Mark slid a folder toward the center of the table, then opened it with the tidy ritual of someone who knows paper can change weather. He laid out evidence like puzzle pieces snapping into place, the account opening documents with my name alone, the ledger of deposits, payroll transfers, year-end bonuses, small freelance checks, each bearing my employer's or my own name. The total, $85,000 accumulated over 10 years. And finally, the bank's printout of the wire details with a line that read, "Authorized user, Kathleen Bennett, N.O." He placed a clean sheet on top with a single sentence centered, $0 from parents. He spoke without heat. "Here are the facts. The account is titled solely to Kathleen. She is the only authorized owner. Every deposit into the account was hers. $0 came from either of you. You obtained access to her online banking without permission and initiated a wire. That is financial misappropriation, and in this state, it is actionable." Mom's mouth opened, closed. "We contributed," she tried. "We paid her car insurance years ago. We co-signed her first lease." Mark nodded, patient like a teacher. "That generosity, if you choose to frame it that way, does not grant you unilateral rights to her savings. Past assistance is not a lien on a daughter's future." Dad jabbed a finger at the documents, as if he could puncture them. "This is ridiculous. We had a family agreement. Do you have it in writing?" Mark asked. "A trust instrument? A joint account signature card? Any document showing consent to use these funds for Lily's benefit?" Silence. Lily looked down at her manicure. Mark continued, voice even. "The bank has imposed a hold. The escrow company has been notified and will not disperse. We have a draft complaint ready to file seeking injunctive relief, restitution, and fees. Here is the alternative." He slid another document forward, shorter, cleaner. "A stipulated agreement. You acknowledge the transfer was unauthorized. You agree to return the full $85,000 plus statutory interest, and you agree to cease any further attempts to access Kathleen's accounts. In exchange, we agree not to file the complaint today." Mom made a small sound, somewhere between a plea and a warning. "Richard." Dad stared at the window, jaw working. Then he turned on me. "You would take us to court," he said, "not a question, a condemnation." "Your own parents?" "I would go to court to get my money back," I said. "Yes." Lily exhaled dramatically. "You don't understand what you're doing. The closing is Friday. If I lose this, the seller will." Mark didn't look at her. "The seller will do what sellers do. Find another buyer. Your sister is not obligated to fund your timeline. Dad pushed his chair back. The legs screamed against the floor. You are choosing a stranger over your family, he told me, chin out toward Mark like he was the interloper. A lawyer over your father. Mark folded his hands. She's choosing herself, he said. That's what adults do when someone takes their property. Mom started to cry then, soft at first, then louder, each sob landing on the table like a dropped fork. She aimed them at the air, at God, at the story this was ruining. After everything, she gasped. After all we've done. I felt the old reflex rise, apologize, soothe, fix, but it floated at the surface and then dissolved. My hands stayed still in my lap. My voice stayed level. After everything I've done, I said. 10 years. The bank's attorney dialed in by speakerphone to confirm the hold and to remind everyone that any attempt to circumvent it would be treated as fraud. The word sat there, heavy and official, not an insult, a category. Dad didn't like someone else drawing lines. He tried to spar, to throw around phrases like internal family matter. The bank's counsel said calmly, our client is the account holder of record. We have a duty to her. The room shifted one click more toward reality. Mark summarized. We can litigate, he said, and we will win. Or we can sign this stipulation now, wire the funds back with interest by close of business tomorrow, and all of you can avoid a public complaint that will become part of the record. Your choice. Dad's nostrils flared. He looked at Mom, who looked at the documents, who looked at me. Lily stared at the clean line that said interest for $1,000. She whispered, incredulous, interest? Are you serious? It's money you used without permission, Mark said. Money has a time value. That is the law, not an opinion. Lily shoved her chair back so hard it hit the credenza. This is sick, she said, her composure finally cracking. You are jealous. You always have been. You can't stand that something good is happening to me. Her voice pitched higher. Because of you I'll lose my house and my wedding. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, the door banging the glass wall, the sound ringing in the conference room like a bell no one wanted to hear. The three of us left stared at the stipulation. Dad rubbed his temple, a move I'd seen before in kitchens. He asked the only question he had left, can we pay in installments? Mark shook his head once. Funds wired in full by tomorrow. You can speak to your bank about a cashier's check if needed. If payment is not received, the complaint is filed at 8 a.m. and we seek a temporary restraining order and a lease pendens on the La Jolla property. Mom's fingers trembled. She picked up the pen. Dad didn't move, so she nudged it toward him, the way she nudges a salt shaker when he refuses to ask for it. He signed first, a scrawl that cut through the calm serif font. Mom signed next, careful loops, a little shake on the last letter of her name. Mark slid the document to me. I initialed where my counsel indicated, my own name small and firm in the margin. There, Mark said softly, gathering the pages, tapping them into a tidy stack that felt like the end of an era and the beginning of something else. We'll expect the wire confirmation by tomorrow at 5. Dad stood, already rewriting. This never leaves this room, he barked, as if command could cauterize shame. Mark didn't answer. He didn't have to. Paper leaves rooms whether people approve or not. On the sidewalk afterward, the air felt brighter, louder. Cars hissed by on wet asphalt. Someone laughed into a phone loud enough to make a flock of pigeons scatter. Mark handed me a copy of the stipulation in a crisp envelope. It won't feel good, he said, reading my face with unnerving accuracy. It will feel true. In the glass behind us, I saw Lily's white blazer flash as she turned the corner, moving fast, head down, phone to ear. The door she'd slammed still vibrated in my body. A month later, I was sitting in a credit union lobby with fluorescent lights humming and a tiny fern trying its best on the windowsill, holding a cashier's check for $89,000. The numbers looked both stern and merciful. I didn't shake this time. I slid the envelope into my bag and, for the first time in 10 years, felt the future loosen its jaw around my life. I didn't put it aside for a wedding. Instead, I opened a map and traced my finger east until the blue-green folds of the Appalachians gathered around a city I'd only ever visited in photos and dreams, Asheville, North Carolina. I booked a cheap flight, a cheaper motel, and 2 days later a realtor handed me a listing that felt like a dare. It wasn't grand. 2 rooms, 1 bath that needed new grout, a sagging porch that sighed when you stepped on it, and a backyard that looked wild until you noticed the order underneath: raised beds, an old clothesline, a stone path half swallowed by time. In the center of the yard stood a huge white oak, older than my grandparents', branches thrown wide like a promise. The house had a steep roof and wood siding that begged for paint. The price was within reach if I was willing to do the work myself. I signed the papers shaking for an entirely different reason. The first night, I slept on an air mattress with a thrift store quilt and the window cracked open to let in a kind of quiet I'd never owned. In San Diego, quiet always felt borrowed, sirens somewhere far off, someone's bass line vibrating a wall. Here, it was crickets, a dog barking once, and then deciding against it, the wind combing through leaves. I woke at dawn, made coffee on a hot plate, and walked barefoot to the oak. I touched the bark and said out loud, "Hi. I'm staying." Work traveled with me easily: laptop, hotspot, a folding desk set up in the room that would be my office once the paint dried. My clients barely noticed the change. A website loads the same whether you push it from a rented studio near the coast or a small house under a long-arm tree. Between commits, I scrubbed baseboards, patched holes, learned the patient rhythm of painter's tape. I chose colors that felt like a second skin: a soft green for the bedroom, a clean white for the office, a happy, ridiculous yellow for the kitchen that turned morning light to butter. I found the hardware store on Marymount where the clerk called me Han and showed me how to choose the right grit of sandpaper. I learned which thrift store gets the good chairs on Wednesdays. I met my neighbor, Mrs. Langley, who brought over a pie and declared the oak the best one on the block. On Saturdays, I walked to the farmer's market, bought tomatoes that tasted like summer even in October, and asked a kid with dirt under his nails how to keep rabbits out of a garden without being a monster. He handed me a roll of chicken wire and said, "You'll figure it out." I dug beds the way I built savings: consistent, stubborn, one small square at a time. I planted zinnias in loud colors near the back steps for luck, and a little ring of hostas where the shade stayed cool even at noon. My hands blistered and then toughened. I slept like a child who'd finally been permitted to stop apologizing for how much space she took up. At night, thunderheads piled up over the mountains, and rain drummed on the roof with a certainty that felt like blessing. One afternoon, as I was stenciling the number on my mailbox, I heard hesitant footsteps on the gravel and looked up to see my mother at the gate. No father. No Lily. She held her purse with both hands, a way she does when she isn't sure of the script. Travel had softened her hair into unplanned curls. Asheville light makes everyone less polished. "Mom?" I said, surprised to hear the gentleness in my voice. She looked from the oak to the porch to me, as if cataloging a life she had not chosen and therefore did not fully trust. "I wasn't sure I had the right address," she said. Then, quieter, like she was practicing a language that wasn't native to her, I realized what we did. "You had every right to be angry." The words didn't unlock anything dramatic. They simply arrived and stood, like a guest you hadn't decided whether to invite in. I didn't forgive her and didn't make it easy. But I opened the gate and said, "Do you want tea?" In the kitchen, she sat on the step stool while water boiled and watched me move around a room I had chosen. We talked about small things: Mrs. Langley's pie, the best place to buy mulch, whether the yellow was too bright. She looked older and somehow lighter. When she reached for a mug, I saw her hands tremble. She said, almost to the oak, "I keep thinking about that account and the way we told ourselves a story about it." I just nodded, poured, and handed her a mug. I walked her back to the gate after we finished our tea. We didn't hug. We didn't plan the next visit. We stood under the oak and let the breeze do what it does here, which is to tell you that time moves forward whether you bless it or not. When she left, I watered the zinnias and sat on the porch steps with my knees pulled to my chest. I could feel the old life like a tide way out beyond the breakers, present but no longer dictating the shore. A real family isn't the ones who take away your dreams, but the ones who help you build them. Here, with dirt under my nails and a roof I paid for, I understood that sentence not as a lesson but as a rule. I knew, in my bones and in my bank app and in the way the oak threw shade at just the right angle, that freedom can be as practical as a painted wall and as radical as telling the truth at your own kitchen table. I spent years believing I was the responsible one, the one who should sacrifice so Lily could shine, so my parents could be proud of her instead of me. But responsibility does not mean servitude. It does not mean letting people take away what you built with your own hands. I saved every dollar in that fund. I denied myself vacations, dinners out, new clothes, and the security of a bigger apartment, all because I trusted my family. And in the end, they proved that trust misplaced. I walked away from the table that night, trembling, broken. I stood up to the phone calls, the threats, the guilt. And when I finally demanded justice, I got it. My savings, my future, my choices, all restored, not because they suddenly valued me, but because I decided to value myself. Never let someone else, not a parent, not a sibling, not even the people you love most, decide what you deserve. Protect what you've worked for. A family that truly loves you will never ask you to destroy yourself for their convenience. And now I want to ask you honestly, has your family ever crossed a line so deeply that you felt betrayed by the very people who should have protected you? What did you do? Did you stay silent, or did you fight back? Tell me in the comments below, because your own stories matter. And please, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. There are more true stories ahead, stories that will make you rethink what family really means.